Hi guys, so in this video I will show you how I will be painting the terrain for my 40k. This is the terrain from the Command Edition starter set. So once you've assembled your terrain, the next step is to prime your terrain. Now the reason we prime is to give a layer for the acrylic paints to adhere to. It also saves a lot of time if you're going to use a colour primer, which is the bulk of the theme. So with this terrain, I'm going for a darker look. So I'm going to prime it in Chaos Black. So once the Chaos Black has fully dried, I then give it a coat of Zandri Dust spray paint. I don't worry too much about the coverage with this, as all those recessed areas are going to retain the Chaos Black, and that's just going to give the building some depth and create those shadows. So next I apply a dry brush of Tyrant Skull. So using a piece of parchment paper or tissue, wipe away most of the excess of the paint, and then working in a circular motion, lightly brushing, making contact with all those raised areas, and that's just going to help us create depth and shadow. Once that's dry, I then apply a 1:1 ratio of Lahmian Medium and Agrax Earthshade. This goes on all the deepest areas on the terrain, so in the ridges and anywhere where I felt it looked visually good. So next up is the floor. To begin with, I apply Leadbelcher to all the metal details beneath the floor, and then after that I apply Abaddon Black to the floor itself. So here I am focusing on the fans and the pipes and just picking out all those metal details beneath. So with the floor itself, I've got a fairly dry brush here, and I'm just holding it at an angle so that I'm getting coverage of the floor, but I'm not hitting any of the metals. Next I apply a coat of Basilicanum Grey contrast paint all over the metals and the flooring. Moving on, next up is the doors and the tank. Using Khorne Red, I thin that down with a touch of water and I give it a nice even coat. Once that's dry, I then give it a dry brush of Evil Sunz Scarlet, working in a circular motion, same as before. Next, we're going to start picking out the detail on the terrain. So all that pipe work, I'm using Mechanicus standard grey. I thin that down, same as before, 1 part water, 1 part paint. And then that's just going to make it be a lot more smoother when we apply the paint to the pipe work. And then later on, we'll be giving it a shade of Nuln Oil. So next, using Leadbelcher, I paint all of the metallic areas on the ruins. So the vents, fans, control boxes, gadgets, all of those areas. So next we're going to apply a recessed shade of Agrax Earthshade to all the metallic parts on the ruins. So the fan, the vents, all these metallic parts, we're just going to darken those areas down and build some depth to those sections. So obviously where you've got the fan, you'd have some shadows here between the grooves. So we're just going to darken those areas down, target those areas with the Agrax Earthshade. So next we're going to apply a shade of Nuln Oil. Now this is going to go on all the grey piping on the terrain, and also we're going to apply it to the tank just in all these recessed areas. And that's just going to help us emphasise the detail more in those parts. So next is the skull on the cog Mechanicus, that ancient symbol that represents the pre-Horus heresy. Using Corax White, I thin that down with a touch of water and paint the right hand side of the skull, and then the left hand side of the cog, and then the lens. Now using Abaddon Black, I thin this down with a touch of water and paint the right hand side of the cog. And next up is a dry brush of Necron Compound all over the cog. And lastly, to finish the cog off, I use Waaaghi Flesh for the lens. For all of the small cabling that's left on the terrain, I decided to go with Abaddon Black. So the next step is weathering. Now this is optional, but I wanted to give the appearance that this building has been set ablaze and all of the metals have rusted and corroded over the years. Using Abaddon Black, I dry brush all of the broken parts, the tops of the pillars, trying to create fire damage and soot. So finally, to create that rusted effect on the metals, I sponge the paint on. This will give a textured appearance. First I use Averland Sunset, then once that's dry I apply burnt Sienna, and then finally I apply burnt Umber. Well, that's it. I'm really happy with these new 40k terrain ruins. I can't wait to get them on the tabletop. I hope this video is really helpful for you. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps me. And I'll see you next time on Miniature Heroes.